Hey guys, Bazzy back here, and in today's video we're going to be going through all the plans for all the created players and created teams that I have for NHL 26. So I do this video yearly, just put out my Word document here for you guys to see everything that we are looking at doing for the first update of this next year's game. This video is just going to be covering created players that are assigned to NHL teams. I'm still currently working on future draft classes, Easter egg players, YouTube series legends. This video is just going to be covering the 32 NHL teams and the potential missing players heading into this next year's game. And I say potential missing players because this year has me a little bit concerned. As I think we know, there's been quite substantive changes with the NCAA eligibility, and players have been jumping back and forth between the CHL and the NCAA, causing quite the mess, as obviously college players cannot appear in NHL games just due to the contracts, the licensing, everything like that. So this year I have tried to get as extra prepared as possible. So what does that mean? Basically, in the document, there's going to be a lot more players that may be in the base game for NHL 26. We're going to have to see, obviously, when that comes out and who is included at launch. There's going to be a lot of those players, I'm telling you right now, that are guaranteed locks for NHL 26, but I have them in this document just in case there is some chance that they are not included. And I just want to have that all in there just so that if players are missing for whatever reason, I'm not scrambling at the launch of the game. And you'll see that as I scroll through the documents here shortly, that those players will be highlighted in yellow if there is at least some chance that they appear in the base game. So that has ballooned this file from last year. The creation of players took about 52 pages, I want to say. This year, without draft classes, I'm at 161. So there's a lot more preparation that went into this year's file and has taken me hundreds and hundreds of hours, I want to say, at this point. It has been constant days of working on this file, trying to get everything updated and up to date for the launch of next year's game. It takes a lot of time now, but it is worth it in the fall. And just a couple of small things I do want to note. The draft years included in this file are 2021 to 2025. We thought 4 years of, previously drafted in players probably is good enough, going through like 2020, 2019. More or less all those players are already more or less in the NHL, if not the AHL. And if they aren't, I don't think there's any great hope that they likely will be. Again, exceptions do apply, but for the most part, this document covers the years 2021 to 2025. 2025, the first 3 rounds, every player has been added to this document. And I more or less added in missing players through 5 rounds. So with all that being said, I'm going to put on some music here. I'm going to start scrolling through this document, and definitely leave your feedback. Anyone that's missing that you want to see in, this is exactly why I put out this video, to get your feedback and get as prepared as possible for NHL 26. That'll do it for me here. I'll see you all in the next video.